Hey guys, let's go ahead and get started on the review here. We are going to be writing an equation that represents the graph on examples 1 through 4. Now, when we're writing the equation, we are going to start off by writing it in vertex form and writing it in factored form. We do not write them in standard form. We can convert to standard form, but we are only going to write them in either vertex or factored. Now, when I want to write in vertex form, I need to have the vertex and one other point. If I'm going to write it in factored form, I need to have both x-intercepts and one other point. So most of us prefer vertex form, and that's probably because we only need two ordered pairs. But x-intercept or factored form, intercept form or factored form are not much harder. It's really not. So just look for what we need to look for, okay? Look for the vertex. If you have it, let's go vertex. All right, so the very first one here. Look anywhere that there's a 0. We talked about these zeros. These zeros are pretty special to us. Here I have a 0, but the 0 is in place of the x, so that means that they give me 39 as y. That's a y-intercept. We do not use y-intercepts when we're writing vertex or factored form. So here I don't have any x-intercepts. So now I'm going to look for the vertex. To look for the vertex, we look in the y column. Do any of our y values repeat? Yes, I see 15 and I see 15. So what ordered pair is in between those two is 3, 12. That's my ordered pair for my vertex. Okay, so since I have the vertex, then I know that I'm going to be writing vertex form. All right, so let's go ahead and start with that. Vertex form is y equals a x minus h, and h is the x value of our vertex, so that's going to be minus 3 squared, and then the k value of our vertex, or the y value of our vertex, which is positive 12. Now, once I've used the vertex, I cannot use that point again. I have to pick another point that I'm going to replace y with and x with. So I need an x and a y value. So it doesn't matter which one you pick, 0, 39, 124. Pick whichever one you choose. I'm going to go ahead and pick 2, 15. Okay. So my y value is 15. We do not know a. The x value is 2 minus 3 squared plus 12. Now, on this one here, now I'm going to go ahead and keep solving this for a. When you get all done, after you find what a equals, you're going to rewrite this equation, and where there's the a value here, we're going to replace a with whatever a equals. Okay? So that's what you're doing for equation number 1 and equation number 2. All right, so let's go down to number 3, and we're going to write an equation here. Now, on equation number 3, I can write it in vertex form or factored form, but I'm going to focus on factored form because I think a lot of us choose vertex form, so we don't know how to do that factored form. So let's practice with that one as well. Okay, so on this graph here, I do have the maximum height. So that means that this is the vertex, 250, 62. Okay, now I also have an x-intercept. The x-intercepts, I think on your paper, the lines weren't showing up as well, but I could see that they were counting between 50 and 100. And the number between 50 and 100 is 75. The number between 100 and 150 is 125. 150, 175, 200, 225. So if they're counting by 25s every time, then I can tell that my next x-intercept is going to be at 425, 0. So I have two x-intercepts and I have a vertex, okay? So when I've got those 3 points, I'm going to go ahead and write the intercept form equation. All right. So let's start with y equals a x, and p is the first x-intercept. So here it's 75. So I have x minus 75. The second x-intercept is x minus 425. Now that I have those x-intercepts written into the equation, I can't use them again. So now I need to have a third point that I can use, and that is 250 and 62. So when I write the equation, the y value is 62. Our x value is 250 minus 75. Then we have 250 minus 425. So on this one, I've got 62 equals A times 175 times negative 175. Okay, so these two here, we are going to multiply together. When I multiply them together, I have 62 equals A negative, now this is going to be a big number, so it's like negative 30,625. Okay. So when I divide, I'm going to divide 62 divided by 30,625. Please understand that just because 30,000 is larger, or negative 30,000 is larger, does not mean that goes in the numerator. The number that goes in the numerator is the one that's on the left side, the one that's already away from the A value. Okay, so we're going to have 62 divided by negative 30,625. That's my A value. Okay, that's what we were looking for. All right, now when I write the final equation, this is the equation that I'm writing. I'm replacing the A value of the equation with this here. Okay, with what A equals. So we have y equals negative 62 over 30,625 times x minus 75 times x minus 425. You could convert that to a decimal, but the decimal is going to be one that is really long, so I decided I'm just going to leave that a fraction. Okay? All right, so let's go down to problem number 4. Remember, on number 3, you can do vertex form, but honestly, guys, factored form is not much more difficult. It's got zeros in there, which actually makes it pretty easy. You just have to remember with factored form, you need 3 ordered pairs. Okay, so let's go on to number 4. On number 4, a skate park creates a new launch ramp. The ends of the ramp touch the ground at x equals 2. So here's 2, 0. And it touches the ground at x equals 10. So this is 10, 0. So I have 2 x-intercepts, so I already know that I can go ahead and use factored form. It also said each unit is 1 foot. That simply is telling us when they're measuring it, they're measuring by feet. Okay? At x equals 3, the ramp raises the skater to 7 feet. But it doesn't say that's the maximum height. So we cannot assume that that's the vertex. That's just another point somewhere on the graph that's closer to 2. Okay? 3, 7. They did not say it was the vertex. They did not say it was the axis of symmetry. They did not say maximum. So we can't just assume that it's a vertex. So I'm not going to use vertex form with this one at all. And just by looking at it, I know that 3 doesn't come in the middle of 2 and 10. So it's not the vertex. All right, so let's go ahead and use factored form. So we have y equals A. And then I have x. My first x-intercept is positive 2. So I do x minus 2. Then my next x-intercept is x minus 10. Now, does it matter which x-intercept I put first? It does not. I put 2 because 2 is the one I see first. Okay, I put 10 second because that's the one I saw second. All right, so just make sure that each variable P and Q are representing only one x-intercept. Now for the next part, I have to replace y with 7. Replace the x's with 3. Okay? Once we do that, you're going to go through and solve it, find your a value, and then rewrite the equation, rewrite this equation with your new a value. All right? Now, that was 1 through 4, that was writing equations. So let's go on to number 5. Now on number 5, we are collecting an action figure whose price is represented by this function, where t is the number of years since it was manufactured. So I'm going to think of this as some little figurine that we purchased. If I purchased this figurine, it originally cost $9 in the store. But we know after you have a toy for a little while, it gets kind of boring, gets lost in the back of the closet, and it doesn't really seem to matter anymore. So it doesn't have any value. Eventually we donate it, get rid of it somehow, and thought, yeah, not important to me. Well, then sometimes some people, grow up and they start collecting these things and think, hey, remember that toy I had when I was a child? I wonder if it's worth anything. So this little toy decreases in value. It's still got some worth till it gets to about here. At this point, we think, yeah, it's not worth anything. And this is a lot of times where you'll see toys donated or thrown in the garbage or recycled and think, yeah, have no meaning. But what happens is that child turns into somebody who collects something, and that child's like, hey, I want that toy back. So that toy is all of a sudden now worth something many years later. It increases in value, and this is when it becomes a collector's item. This is when whoever has it to sell will begin to get profit. So these 2 points, though, that I've drawn are called our x-intercepts. Okay? So those x-intercepts is when the value of the toy is 0. This down here is our vertex. Now, we know that a toy is never going to be worth negative money. We've talked about that. But it's going to be worth 0 during all this time. But for the vertex and the purpose of this equation, we have to find that vertex to see what's the lowest amount of value it could have. So anytime you're looking at something like this, you need to be able to find the vertex and find the x-intercepts. To find the vertex, that's when we use our negative b over 2a to find the x value of the vertex. Once you find the x value of the vertex, you put it back into the function to find the y value of the vertex. Okay, so find the vertex. To find the x-intercepts, that's when we use the quadratic formula. And we know that there's 2 x-intercepts, so we'd have to focus with that. All right, so let's go ahead and walk through on this one and get started on finding the vertex. So for the vertex, I have x equals negative b over 2 divided by a. Right? So our b value is negative 96. Our a value is 6. So this gives us 8. So our vertex, the x value of the vertex is 8. Now to find the y value of the vertex, we put 8 back into the equation. So we have 6 times 8 squared minus 96 times 8 plus 9. Okay. So I'm hoping that you've got your EOC calculator with you. At this point, I don't. So let me do this with the calculator that I have. So 8 squared times 6 is 384. Then I have negative 96 times 8 gives me negative 768 plus 9. So 384 minus 768 plus 9 gives me negative 375. Okay? So what does that mean? That after 8 years, this toy is worth negative $375. Well, money is not going to be something that we're going to pay negative here, but this represents that it loses a lot of value. Okay, so just keep that in mind for the vertex. After 8 years, this is its worth, which is nothing, right? So then the x-intercepts, we have to use the quadratic formula. So we're going to have x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c, all divided by 2 times a. Okay. Once you find your two x-intercepts, because there are two of them, then you'll know your x-intercept for your left side, the x-intercept for the right side. That's where it equals 0. Okay. All right, now let's go ahead then and see what these questions are asking us. So question A, after how many years will the toy's value begin to profit? So when it starts profiting, that's this section here. Okay. So we're going to look at this x-intercept, and we're going to say it's going to profit when x is greater than the second x-intercept, whatever you get for that one. Okay. What will the value of the action figure be after 30 years? So we're going to take 30 and substitute it into the equation. Wherever t is for time, we're going to replace that with 30. So we will have 6 times 30 squared minus 96 times 30 plus 9. Find out how much this is worth after 30 years, right? So 30 is time. How much is it worth? And then it says, during what year will the action figure lose value? So if we're looking at when will the action figure lose value, sorry, trying to get rid of that. Oh, did I want to do all that? When we're looking for when the action figure will lose value, we are looking on this and saying, hey, it loses value when it's underneath this area here. So what x values is it between as when it's losing value, okay? So your smallest x-intercept to your largest x-intercept. All right, that should help you out with that. Make sure you study that, and if you have any questions, feel free to email me, and I will see you all tomorrow.